Last time, I got some beef in the comments that you didn't see me actually roll. So let me record on my phone, and then my editor will edit in afterwards. So I'm just going to do the thing. Oh my god. Hello everyone and welcome back to another episode of Geek Peak. Today I'm talking with Hunter Thompson. Hunter is one half of Je ne sais quoi, which is a musical duo that you can find on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, wherever fine videos are produced. And we're not here to talk about Je ne sais quoi. Spoiler, there's another episode for that. But we are here to talk about Hunter's journey. And I was so excited to talk to him because he is a player on various D&D streams and is a very creative person in general. So, without further ado, enjoy the interview. Hunter Thompson, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I am amazing. Thank you so much. How are you?
I am great.
Good.
I am so excited to talk with you. I've seen your work and we have a lot to dive into.
Sure.
About your art, your TTRPG ventures, and a lot of fan questions that I've curated for us. So before we actually head into that, there are many people in my audience who don't even know who you are. So can you do me the favor of tell me a bit about yourself and what you do today?
What a question. It just brings me back to like kindergarten in a circle, just like one fun fact about yourself kind of thing.
We'll get to kindergarten.
Maybe. Here we go. Well, my name is Hunter Weston Thompson. I sometimes put the middle name in there because Hunter S. Thompson is a very famous writer that Johnny Depp played in a movie. And I like to write, so it's just like, okay, oh, your name is Hunter Thompson. It's like, yeah. Were they inspired? No. It was just a coincidence. But I am an Arkansan, but I've lived all over. I am one half of a creative duo named Je ne sais quoi, where we use puppets to make D&D related content, a lot of music, which is what was inspired by that. I guest and appear as a player on various TTRPG streams a whole lot lately, and I help collaborate and world build on many other streams and things like that. So I'm a poet, I'm a lyricist, I'm a TTRPGist, and just a creative. I guess that's the best way to put it.
That's amazing. Okay, so I'm just going to say, like, the word lyricist.
Yes.
Lyricist.
Yes.
Okay, that's the first time I'm hearing that word in like about a year or so.
Oh.
And actually, talking about music, we are going to talk about Je ne sais quoi in a separate interview.
Yes.
But I want to take you to before all of that. I want to take you back to the past. And I want to take you to the time where you decided, or maybe even before you decided, to call yourself an artist or call yourself a creator. Who was Hunter back then?
Oh my gosh, these open-ended questions are like so many avenues to answer this.
Choose your own adventure.
Choose your own adventure. Well, I feel like I arrived late to that designation, and I kind of have a weird relationship with any sort of label or moniker or title or anything, because I feel like there's a lot of flexibility and fluid and kind of ill-defining of just terms depending on the person, but it is very interesting. So I moved around a crazy amount as a kid because my dad was with Walmart and Kmart and would be a store manager, and they would want him to fix up another store like every 6 months or so. And so there's a lot of that. And then around, actually, I guess proper to note is that I was a really bullied kid in all these different places. Like I had a huge like Coke bottle glasses. My body grew in these very strange ways. Like I was just very like beanpole, very pale. I can't tan at all. I'll just like burn purple and then go right back to pale. There's no tanning period. Weird haircuts, very shy, not like a real guide into social aspects of life. I have 4 older brothers, but 1 full brother who's 2 years older than me. And I don't want to like throw him under the bus in this interview, but we'll say he wasn't protective of me in these scenarios, kind of heightened that bullying aspect. And so I was quite alone and very, very shy, very introverted, dangerously so, just like so rigid and in fear. But it came to the point where I was just like, there was a sense of relief of this too shall pass. I'll just move on to another place. And so before I moved back to Arkansas, I was in a place called Trinidad, Colorado. And that was the first time I really started to get accepted. We were there for a little bit longer. And so I started to make a few friends, and that was nice. And my dad called me out to his car to tell me that we were moving. And on the way there's like a ring of cheerleaders there. And I'm like in 6th grade. And they're just like, "Hi, Hunter." And I'm like, I've made it. Like, cheerleaders like me. This is great. And for like this really nerdy kid, I was like, oh, the dream. And then my dad was like, "We're going to leave in like a week." And I was just, I have worked so hard. So we go to like small town Arkansas. And there's about 900 people in the town. And I went from a very diverse school to one that was very, very Southern, very white. And people were saying slurs kind of left and right. And I was just like, you guys got to get out more. And so I just retreated into myself again. I really cocooned myself. And so, because I thought I was going to leave in like 6 months, but that didn't happen. We actually stayed there till graduated. So that was in 7th grade, and around 9th grade, I had to take a class, 6th period. Didn't have anything I wanted to take, but there was a drama class, funny enough, in this small little school. I was like, I'll go there. That seems fine. And there was like all the seniors and stuff like that, and they were actually incredibly kind to me. They were very, very cool. And I realized, long story short, I had a knack for acting, and it really helped me get out of my shell because I got to be somebody else, as cheesy as that might sound. And so stayed in drama class till I graduated, and went to acting competitions and did really well with that. And then when it came time for college, it was like, what do you want to do in college? Like, oh, I only really like theater, so let's go do that. So went to a university not that far away and started doing theater stuff, which was a whole nother kind of can of beans. But to answer your question, that's when I started to think of myself like, okay, I have something in me that can churn out something creative. And if I may, kind of turning the question just a little bit, which is kind of a theme throughout, I was always really interested in how humans connect with one another. And that displays in a lot of different ways. And when I realized you can take that, because when I was really shy and really nerdy, all you do is people watch. You just observe all the time. And taking that understanding and then finding a way to replicate it through this kind of acting and theater was monumental for me. It was like, I have all this information stored up. Now I can do something with it. And I was still learning as I, got to college and everything. I was just kind of happy to be there. And of course, some people were pretty rough and took it the wrong way, or were using it as like kind of stepping stool to like kind of crush other people. There are other bullies there, but it was like water off a duck's back. And I was like, guys, it's okay. It's all good. We're just here to kind of play around with one another. But yeah, to answer that question, I would say about 9th grade is when I started to adopt that sensibility.
Okay. I love that you said, like, as a nerdy kid, you people watch. That is something I wholeheartedly relate to, because I still do it.
Yeah.
To this day. The difference is that back then I was just watching. Today I also have a journal.
Ooh.
And I write. And I write these things. Okay, so we reached like this interesting point about acting. And I would love to know, like, back then, did you have like some sort of like actors that you looked up to, or maybe like works of art that inspired you? Where like did you feed that acting side of your personality?
Ooh. It's very interesting. I feel like, well, a couple things come to mind. Number one is when I was on the playground growing up, a lot of times I loved pretend. Like, that is just the best thing in the world. And of course that makes a whole lot of sense with what I do now. I loved actors' interviews. I loved feeling less alone in that sort of thing. So listening, especially to stand-up comedians, of like, I don't know how to do anything else. And I just, I didn't want to, this is kind of very real and raw, but I didn't want to be humiliated, they would say. So I was the first to make the joke. So I got the jump on it. So I'm controlling the narrative of the comedy. And so I was very, very shy. And then around like probably 11th grade, I started to try to be the funny guy, which of course I was boxing myself in. But I didn't know how to do that. So I was very obnoxious about it. And so seeing certain actors, certain professionals and things like that do it in a way that was constructive, that was supported by others, that wasn't this terribly obnoxious thing, that wasn't utilizing methods to tear other people down. I mean, best in the world is like Robin Williams, just like watching, just mesmerized by this entire thing, because it was a complete control of the narrative. Like, just, you know, he gets a crumb and goes a mile with it. But just less so watching performances, which I love to watch and dissect, of course, but seeing the gap between the interview to the performance was just astronomical. Just so cool. And how they arrived at all the decision making that they did, and how different that person might be than what they were putting on screen or on stage or anything like that. Kind of strengthened that you can be whatever you want to be. And don't be selfish about it. You know, no man is an island, it takes a village, all that sort of thing. And I think that's very true to these sort of creative outputs. Like I said, in college, we had kind of a group of people that were not great. They were, I think they were bullied kids like me, but then, you know, that fork in the road kind of presents itself to, are you going to bully yourself to try to make up for that? Or are you going to realize that you don't want anyone else to feel like you do? And so there were a lot of interesting, like, creative coal of people that I just kind of knew that if they had the right support, they would go off and do these like amazing things, or you could collaborate with, and we would be better than the sum of our parts kind of thing. But some people just kind of left being creative for the time that I knew them, just because people were just kind of mean, kind of cruel. And so back to your question, is who I was interested in was someone that did not push others down to make something of themselves that could create out of thin air and brought others up along with them. So like a lot of improv groups, people that came out, improv groups like Second City and the Tina Feys and a lot of Saturday Night Live alums, you know, that's pure like ensemble collaboration. That was always really cool, really inspiring for me.
Okay. Would you say that acting and like those early days where you were like interested in acting and in some way like started indulging in it even in that school, would you say back then it was more like some kind of escapism?
Absolutely. Yes. It's interesting because I would say that all the time, but now hearing it and being asked about it, you kind of define the terms in your head of like, what are you escaping exactly? And I think it has a lot to do with trying to control the narrative, sure. I think the escaping the idea of things being temporary, even now, I feel like at any given time, I'm going to move, I'm going to be whisked away somewhere. And so permanence isn't really something that I've had ever. So, yeah, it was just escaping a sense of impending humiliation that was then going to be a sense of unconsented travel to somewhere else to just kind of start the process over again. So constructing something for myself through acting was a great relief. It was, the pressure is off of me because I'm on this character. People are responding to what I do through information that I gathered in a really dark place. So I'm transforming what was bad into something good. And I'm connecting with people at the same time. And that's what I just yearned for a really, really long time. So it was escaping to a reality I wanted through absolute fantasy, for sure.
Okay. So, like, going from fantasy, how do you connect with D&D and other like fantasy inducing kind of games as you age?
Well, I spent a lot of time by myself, and I played video games as one does, and got pretty good at them. And a lot of stories here. I'll try to not get into the weeds of it because I'm just like, ooh, games. But
Video games.
I was introduced by my best high school friend, Justin, to a game called Destiny, which I caught the kind of later half of that game's existence before the sequel came out. And he was like, hey, we should get Destiny 2 and play together. I was like, for sure, but I don't have the new Xbox or new PlayStation or anything like that. No, we were playing on PlayStation. I was like, I don't have like a PS4 or anything. And he's like, okay. And then my mom was very sweet, and she got me one to play Destiny 2, right? So I was like, oh, I get to play with my friend Justin at launch, this sort of thing. Great. And then I'm playing. I set up like a clan for us to make together, and I get to play with my friend. I'm so excited. And Justin says, hey, I actually am going to go to Xbox and play this game. And I'm like devastated. I was like, dude, okay. And I'm like complaining to my mom about this. And what does she do? So my birthday was around Christmas. So Christmas came around. She's like, here's an Xbox. Play with your friend. I want you to have a good time. I'm like, Mom, please don't. I hate people spending money on me. And so she was like, you never ask for anything. Here you go. I can finally get you something. So I get Destiny 2 for Xbox now. And I start it all up. And Justin hasn't played with me that much. You know, he's busy with work and all that sort of stuff. So I'm playing on Xbox. And then months down the line, he goes like, hey, by the way, I'm just going to play this on PlayStation. And I was like, I'm not playing with you, dude. Like, I have started this whole profile. I'm so far along. I'm not restarting back to where I started. So even now, we still haven't really played the game together. And I think now he's back on Xbox. I was like, good for you, dude. Like, whatever. But that opens me up to, for the one and only time I go into like an Xbox message board looking for a clan. And there's like a fairly small one. They seem nice enough. And so I said like, hey, can I join? They're like, yeah, for sure. And so I make friends with all those guys. Cut to a few months down the line. They're all very sweet. One of them messaged me, like kind of the mod of the thing, says, hey, have you ever played D&D? And I'm like, Dungeons and Dragons? I've obviously heard of it, but no, I don't know what that is. But like, yeah, we can do like Lost Mines of Phandelver. We got the starter kit. And I was just like, yeah, for sure. And I thought I had to like make up a race in class. So I'm digging deep into like, this is what they look like. And she kind of just laughs at me and says like, no. Well, you have like starter characters. You just figure out what their name is. I was like, oh, that's much easier. Okay, sure. So played a bard called half-elf bard named Clef Lotusfoot. Who played a sham and smoked like a blue lotus plant through that sham and was like a cross between Forrest Gump and Johnny Appleseed, and just such a chill character, and I was just in love with the process. And so we did that, and we started one other thing, but it fell through. But one person that I invited to play in this D&D game with us said like, hey, let's do our own thing. And so he invited his wife and his brother-in-law, and we played like 3 campaigns together. We still play together every Saturday. I played every Saturday with these people for like 6 years now. And
wow.
So I was just like, this can really be something. And in a very, where it got really dark, where it really got very alone, I was like, well, I got Saturday to look forward to. That can scratch that creative itch just enough to kind of get me through. So without everything else, without the creativity, without the theater of it all, the acting, the fantasy, all that sort of stuff, I remember this quote that perfectly exemplifies this feeling is, happiness is simply something to look forward to. And so that's it. I just had Saturday, and that got me through. So D&D just worked its way into my heart just for fulfilling that position that I needed so desperately at a dark time.
That's so cool. Like, you had D&D not just as a creative outlet, like to express your acting like part of yourself, but also to fulfill that need, like for social interaction.
Yes, absolutely. And it's all through, Discord, and they live in Louisiana, so like one state below me. Still haven't met them. I've never played D&D in real life. That's something I would love to do. It's all just been, but a lot of what I've done, a lot of the collaboration, which many, many stories there, has been just truly global, truly international. Which why it's so funny that the people that I played with are just one state away. They're just right there.
Okay, that's so cool. Fun fact about me: I haven't played D&D in real life either. I also haven't played online, but I did play like D&D adjacent things, like either video games or like other things in the world.
Sure.
But actually, like this Passover, which is like in a like this entire week and a half that starts in 2 days, is like probably going to be my first opportunity to play with my friends.
You will have to let me know
amazing.
How it goes. I want to know all the things,
Yeah.
who you play, how you feel. It's so good.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm actually working on doing like a starter character, so we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, yeah. D&D is actually a real cool opportunity because I'm very big on from the bullied thing. Like I was the perpetual new kid all the time. So if I'm ever in a situation where I have more experience than someone coming in, that new kid in the cafeteria feeling, they are under my wing. I will do whatever I can to protect this person, to guide them through that, because I didn't have that benefit. And D&D presents that opportunity all the time of like, I helped somebody just the other day who was, it's a very overwhelming experience. Like, what spells do I do? I'm at this level, all that sort of stuff. And you just kind of break it down mechanically, but also creatively. And it's the best thing in the world to play with new people who bring in a fresh sense of imagination and aren't constrained by what the limits of what we think we can do, So it's very cool. It's a very cool experience.
Okay, so you did say before that you played a lot of games.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you know this about me, but I'm a huge gamer.
Nice.
So I do want to ask you, what are the types of games that you like to play aside from Destiny? Like, what other games did you play?
Oh, man. I've played every Pokemon game. I think we all have a fandom that we fall into, and I discovered Pokemon at like 12, and right when like Red and Blue came out, and I was like, this is it. This is great. So it's really all over the place. I like first-person shooters. I learned the hard way in high school with Halo 2 and LAN parties and just getting demolished by my friends. But it made me good. But it took a while to get there, and they were more than happy to do that to me. Then right when pandemic started, like almost everybody else, Animal Crossing was just like, I just need to chill. This is great. Some people took it way too seriously, and there was like black markets, and they were spending like real money for these little characters. Like, that's not me. That's not my bag. But really anything that catches my interest. I don't like PvP as much, and I don't like games that really make people very toxic. So like in Destiny, for example, they have raids, but my very little raid experience were just with people that were so mad. They were so angry. I'm like, it's not why I'm here, man. You need to calm down. So I just kind of avoid those things. So really chill games, things that are really nice. I haven't gotten into Stardew Valley, which is very interesting. But that's everybody's favorite little chill game. But yeah, the biggest answer is Pokemon. Still playing that. Still great.
Okay, so we share Pokemon. I also played, I think, all of the Pokemon games.
Yeah.
From Red, Blue, Yellow, like all the way to the latest, which I played, which was Scarlet.
Hey, Scarlet too.
Yeah, so Scarlet was so good, and I'm now trying to get my friend to buy Violet, so we can actually like have the differences,
yeah,
in trade and stuff like that.
I'm missing two for that reason.
So like Pokemon was one thing, Yu-Gi-Oh was another thing, like physical game.
Yeah.
And also role-playing games. This is my actual forte, like Mass Effect, Dragon Age, The Witcher, all of those. I love that. Like, this is the epitome of escapism for me. Well, maybe until I play D&D. But for now, like in video games, this is like the best. Dropping into a game.
Sea of Thieves? You ever play that?
No, but the name sounds familiar.
It's kind of cartoony, but it is a totally PvP game, which a lot of people don't like, and I'm always kind of avoiding. But the water animations are amazing, and I'm very big on water. So I'll just go there and just get on my little pirate ship and just sail and fish and just chill out. And nobody really bothers me. It's like, it's just a guy fishing. Good for him. Oh, I just had the other one too. I can't. Oh, Grounded is another game that I highly recommend that came out where you're essentially like Honey, I Shrunk the Kids in a backyard. So just nice, chill experiences with a giant spider that will come out of nowhere. All good.
This is the Geek Peak. This is what we're talking about.
Oh, such a good name, the Geek Peak. Let's just talk about this. Like, just go down our favorite. It's so funny when you're asked, like, I've been playing video games my entire life. What do you play? What are video games? Like, what? Wrecking the Rolodex. How does that work? I played Super Smash Brothers for a really long time, and then when the new one came out, I weaned off of it a little bit. I don't know why. I don't know why I'm like this. Anyway, lots of Mario games. Mario games are always amazing. Every single one. All the old sports ones, to Mario Kart, to Mario Party, all the time. Okay.
Yeah, but they always felt like console focused.
Yeah.
And I played most of my games on a PC.
I'm the opposite.
Until I got like... sorry, what did you want to say?
Oh, I just said like I'm the opposite.
Yeah, so I have like a Nintendo Switch, and like aside from my PC, so that's the console I play on. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so let's like advance from that period of your life, from like going into playing video games, and then like going into D&D and all that, and then like how do you get the opportunity to appear on streams and productions and stuff like that?
Okay, long version of this story.
This is what I want.
It's very butterfly effecty, no pun intended. Butterflies are following me around in all my life now. So I moved to Houston to help my mom through a divorce. I was living on my own, and my mom wanted to get away, and I was like, this is great news. So I dropped everything and got my mom and moved her in with my aunt and my uncle, and we became caregivers of my uncle, who had severe Parkinson's and dementia. And so that was my life for about 4.5 years from that point. And so I was isolated before that point, but then I was just like, I don't know anybody around here. Family ties are very thin, and I was very lonely and very isolated. That's when I started really kind of playing D&D with my friends and needing those Saturdays. So I was also introduced because of my first group to a show called Critical Role, which is like the ties that do bind us all. And I was like, oh, this is fantastic. This is great. And eventually I wanted to get some art done for, and this will probably come up in the Genasi Quiet interview as well, but this is the funny little story. I wanted some art done, and I was looking for a particular style, and before Critical Role starts for like 15 minutes, and in the intermission, they will have like a slideshow, or they used to have a slideshow of fan-made art, and with their little Instagram handle or whatever. And I saw one that I just loved, and I was like, oh, this is really cool. It was a little minimalist. It was really well done, really clean. And I messaged her, the artist, on Instagram, never done that before or since, and was like, hey, very small account. And I was just like, hey, I love your art. It was on Critical Role. She had no idea that was being featured, so it was news to her. She was very excited. And so that struck, her name is Gretchen. And so that struck up a friendship that still goes to this day. And she lives in South Africa, international. And so we talked on there and then moved to WhatsApp. And so we would talk all the time, and we would always say, like, I'm going to guest in your game, you're going to guest in my game, because her husband would DM for her and all that sort of stuff. And so like 2 years down the line, she's like, hey, we have an opportunity for someone to come in and guest. Would you like to do this? And time zones are kind of wonky. I was like, yeah, for sure. Who else plays in your game? And she's like, there's this couple, Chris and Tiffany from Ireland, And so funny is that I know them because they also messaged me on Instagram the 2 times it ever happened because of our on Critical Role. And we became friends and I was like, wow, that's so weird, but hilarious. And so I joined in their game as this Corgi folk rune knight named Bonholm. And I immediately hit it off. Like, I've played in a lot of games now, but it's still a crazy experience to go like, hi, nice to meet you, immediately into playing a game with them. And someone gave a really good quote last night, because I did just that last night, by some philosopher, not Plato, but somebody else, of the best way to get to know someone is through play, that sort of thing. I was like, yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Through an hour of play. And so I played with them in this one guest spot. It eventually came back as a guest. But the longer version is Bonholm was a Corgi folk because Gretchen really wanted to play a Corgi folk, which was not a race, but you can make whatever you want. And so they made this like Fey dog race because she loves Corgis. And I was like, that's on the table. I definitely want to be one as well. So Bonholm, well, the idea with the Fey Corgi race is that they're not all the typical colors. Since they live in the Feywild, they can kind of earn through great feats a very colorful fur. And so my character was like 100 years old and totally black with like gold filigree that was kind of like constantly moving on his fur. And he did that because he found an artifact in his travels and returned it wanting nothing in return. You know, that kind of like, oh, thanks. Do you want anything? No, I'm good. You know, so they gave him the, you know, the fur appeared, but he also got a keg that he would carry on his back that was a portal to his Feywild tavern that he ran with his family at any given time, which became like a great refuge kind of thing. So he's like, oh, great. And so he was this planar traveler and would find ingredients in all these different planes that he would put in this keg that would be transported to his many grandchildren, because I'm just like, okay, he's like a Corgi folk, so he probably has like litters of puppies over and over and over again. So, you know, I named all like 37 children that he had, and his wife named Faith Hazel. And I'm like, okay, well, she probably has a kind of colored fur story as well. And so I need to make up a reason in case it comes up why she has this. And so since they're in the Feywild, it's very kind of fairy tale-ish. I was like, oh, I imagine her going to a pond and there's the moon who doesn't want to set because it's scared of the dark. And so Faith would sing a lullaby to the moon every night. And so she got like a moonglade stripe down her spine that kind of looked like a moonlight rippling in the water. And so then I'm like, well, if she sings this original lullaby, I got to write it. And so we played that and I kind of introduced that story. And then after the session in their little group chat, I was like, oh, by the way, here's the lullaby. And so Chris, who I knew barely, I think it barely came up that he did music during that like quick session. He was playing a bard, you know. He got a ukulele out and sang it like 10 minutes later to me. And I'm like crying. I'm just like, this is the best experience. Like it didn't have to be anything, but now it's a tangible thing. That's like a theme that comes up, to make something that is tangible. It has an existence away from me now. And so cut to 6 months later, we watch Bo Burnham's Inside and he messages me. He's like, hey, we need to do something. If he can do that in one room, what can we do? Let's collaborate on something. And I was so in my feels and so not wanting to be, I didn't have any social media. I was just in my dark, low place, just getting by. And I was like, okay, yeah, let's do this. And so we just stumbled through the process, and I got onto Discord and jumped into voice chats and was like, hey, yeah, my name is Hunter and I like D&D contents like you guys, on this TikTok, which I never thought I would be on, but we got some attention and people really responded to it. And then through these talks, because I'm kind of like the public facing half of this Je ne sais quoi, people are like, hey, you should be on the stream. Do you want to guest on this thing? Do you want to play with us? And so I was just doing like one shots and things, like various home games. And then it became streams. And the biggest one was on the Legend of Alos channel, where we did like a 8-episode mini campaign where the finale was 9 hours long. And yeah, and it made a lot of people very emotionally distraught. It was so full of tears the entire time. Everybody was very tired, very dehydrated. But it was the best cast I could have ever hoped for. And we all looked really good because of each other, because there's a great balance and respect of time. And it really reminded me of doing like improv theater, of everyone was there for everybody else. And so I think that got quite a few people's attention of like, okay, let's do this thing. And just constantly bothering people, just like, not like, hey, put me on a stream, but like, hey, what are you working on? Do you just need a sounding board? Let's talk about it. Like, okay, not wanting anything in return, just to talk about creative stuff, because I knew how valuable talking about things were. So ipse flippe, from watching Critical Role and needing art and messaging someone so randomly on Instagram, to now performing in all these Twitch streams and getting interviewed and all that sort of stuff, is a crazy butterfly effect that I will never get used to. I hope that answers the question.
That is answering the question. And I love that you also like closed the entire thing with the butterfly.
Butterflies, man. They will be a part of my life for a long time.
Okay, so I do want to get to a few fan questions that I have.
Sure.
So before we get into fan questions, I have like this little dice here.
Let's do it.
And
okay.
And that dice made an appearance, and I am going to roll it, and I am going to ask you. This is going to be the roll for spoilers segment.
Roll for spoilers.
Yes.
Okay.
So, the most recent character that you play on a stream that I also watch,
yes,
is Mercy.
Yeah.
And for those who don't know, the stream is called Quest Junkies UK. The DM is called Patch, and he will also be on this podcast. But for now, I'm going to roll, and I could roll a 1, but I could also roll a 20. And I ask you if you will tell us a little fun fact, or even a spoilery fun fact about Mercy, based on the roll of the die.
Okay, so what is the scale? Like 1 is just a spoiler, and 20 is a bombshell?
So 1 could even be like a lie, for all I care. Like, a fail is a fail.
Sure. Okay.
Okay, so last time I got some beef in the comments that you didn't see me actually roll. So let me record on my phone, and then my editor will edit in afterwards. So I'm just going to do the thing. Oh my god. I rolled a 20.
I would like to believe
rolled
you.
A 20.
So what I'm hearing is that you had a video before now that you just casually flipped. No, it's totally fine. I believe you. Yes, Mercy is on the Wildmount Chronicles on the Quest Junkies UK channel, DM'd by Lovely Patch. I play Mercy, who has been recently revealed to be a prototype Aormaton made of wood. 20 spoiler. Like, I'm trying to think. Oh, this will. I wonder where I just had a big lore dump too.
You don't have to say it, okay? I literally thought that I would roll like a 5 or something.
No,
I didn't expect 20.
I respect the rules of any game I'm a part of. Let's see. There's a lot I left out of the lore dump because it was really a lot about the calamity that my character survived with a young girl named Eleanor, and kind of talking that he's been alive for 1,200 years. So a lot to spoil there. Classic "you are a butterfly," not yet. There is I'm kind of writing the line of like spoiler to like hopefully garnering interest as well. Especially in the last session with the shared dream of a calamity-like event, and for eagle-eyed viewers, Mercy, who is all about doing murals and art and painting, has been incorporating stars almost absent-mindedly in lots of different scenarios, and we're only going into like session 5. There is a very powerful reason Mercy is doing that, and I am truly terrified of the implications of doing so. And I will say even more with the natural 20. There is a through line through the art that Mercy does that I don't know if the other players will pick up on for dozens of episodes, but everything is very methodically done, and kind of guised under, oh, this is cool art, this is referencing this sort of thing, but there's definitely a through line that could be very bad. Could be very bad.
That is very, very cool. I'll be keeping that in mind.
Yeah.
as I go. It is like there is like this sort of undertone that even though Mercy is very like this emotional or emotionally driven kind of character, but he is still Aeorian. And we like I'm not big on critical role lore. How that was
yeah,
tough.
it's a tongue twister.
So I'm not big on that, but we do know that Aeor is very, very secretive and shifty.
Yes.
So you saying that sounds right.
Yeah. This was definitely a very intense, the most intense backstory I've made. The most kind of intense aesthetics that I've made for a character. I like really weird characters. I like finding the most serious way of taking the ridiculous. So a lot of juxtapositions. It is a ridiculous looking character, but like how grounded could I make them? And that seems to be going really well. Not just grounded for myself or the viewer, but grounded for the other players as well. So it kind of leads me to playing like older characters or like wiser characters to just kind of be like a support system there. But you're absolutely right. I like to give nuggets to the DMs as well of like, hey, here's the thing, do with it whatever you want, you know, stab me in the back or make it a beautiful thing. I don't know. But with kind of Aeor and all that huge chapter of lore is millions of things that Patch could do to me and seems to already be doing.
Okay. Now it's time for some fan questions. Woo. Okay. So the first question is from Beth. And Beth asks, how long on average do you spend working on your TikToks?
Oh, I just was talking about this because it depends on the TikTok. I do a lot of filler content, which is just I'll hear a sound and kind of reverse engineer or go like, oh, I have a really silly idea. So unfortunately, it's like, have the idea. I have a little puppet studio right there, this little puppet stage. And I have to have someone help me with playback. And so then I lip sync it and then take the footage, put it in CapCut and try to do that. And get, my walls are green. Like, this is the house, or not the house, but the room is like a game room, but it's like the perfect shade of green. So I put the right lighting on it, and it's a green screen for me.
That's so cool.
For the longer ones, the ones I really like doing, which are these little music videos, they take quite a bit longer. So it's the initial idea kind of phase, and usually, actually, no, it's pretty 50-50, like writing the lyrics of what it is, send it over to Chris, who is like prodigious musician, gets it back to me over the course of maybe like a week. And then I try to come up with some sort of visuals that go with it. And we do like a lot of parodies. And so with puppets, unfortunately, they are naturally like stuck. They don't move really all that much because of this little stage. So I have to introduce kinetic motion. So it really depends. Those can like go on editing for a few days to like a week. Right now we're working on something called Roll for Song, which is we write a song based on dice rolls, and we write a song in like an hour. But then I'm sure Gavin can empathize with me. It's a crazy amount of footage, and I have no video editing experience. So I'm just like, how do I make this 52-minute thing into like 1 minute, which is kind of like a temporal paradox, right? Because I'm using a lot of time to make a lot of time much shorter, but that takes a lot of, so it can be all from a few hours to multiple weeks.
Okay. Cool. The next question is from Charm. And the question is, if you could go into battle with any of your characters beside you, who would you pick?
If I could go into battle with any of my characters beside me, oh my god. I think it would have to be, funny enough, we have mentioned Bonholm Jumbuk Sudson, my Corgi Folk level 17 Rune Knight fighter, because a crazy amount of protective elements, great amount of reactions, incredibly loving, gave him like a James Earl Jones voice. Not a great one, but, the best that I could. So he has drinks afterward, and he can protect you like no other, and have a crazy amount of offense. So, yeah, we'll go with Bon.
Okay, so just in terms of like picturing the character in my mind,
sure.
Is this like an actual corgi or an anthropomorphic?
Anthropomorphic corgi. He's larger than most because Rune Knight feature made him like 2 feet taller. So he's probably about almost 5 foot tall, and he has like a very rotund kind of dad bod situation, but walks on like 2 legs, and has like a kind of like Studio Ghibli keg on his back everywhere he goes.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's very cool. Yeah. Okay, the next question is from Sin, Cin. Yeah. I think that's
absolutely
Sin. What do you find works best in overcoming creative blocks?
Nature. Just get outside. Listen to some waves. If you got like a body of water nearby, walk in a park, get some vitamin D, walk around a neighborhood. I really like the sounds of like a breeze through trees. Like, it's just simplicity, right? The other thing that works for so many people is, and there's like a brain reason for it. I'm trying to think of the reason. There's a name for it. But it's when your body's doing something so mechanical, or that you've done a million times. So like toilet, shower is just like when you're just sitting there, or when you're like taking a shower, you're doing these other things. So your mind clears up so properly. I've thought of so many ideas in the shower that now I have like baby or like toddler friendly crayons that you can write on the wall in the shower just to not forget ideas, because my mind opens up.
That's so cool.
Don't use the red one though, because it does bleed and it looks like I'm a serial killer in the shower. But I'm saying like the weirdest manifesto. It's just like, corgi, why is that bloody in the shower? Learned from my mistakes. Don't use red. Use blue. It's nice.
That's so cool.
So nature and when nature calls.
Okay. Are you more of like an ocean guy or a forest guy?
Oh my God. Okay, in the elements.
I'm an ocean guy. I'm an ocean guy.
In the elements, fire, water, air, earth, water has always been a draw. Like starter Pokemon, I have started with water every time. Even on like a new playthrough, it's just like, give me Squirtle, Mudkip, all that sort of stuff. I'm going to go with ocean for that, and my mom is such a fan of waterfront and lighthouses and everything, so we have such a nautical, oceanic theme to so many places that I've lived. Where I went to high school, we had a beautiful lake that was there. I went up to Michigan recently, and we were like 30 seconds from Lake Superior, and there's something about the ocean and large bodies of water that is amazing, and the lore, like the folklore behind it, and also forests have so many mosquitoes, and mosquitoes love me, so they get a penalty.
Mosquitoes love me. That's awesome. So the next question is from Lindsaylook. Lindsaylook.
Yes.
How has creating these mini D&D musical scenes inspired creativity in other aspects of your life?
Ooh, that's a good question. How has creating these musical scenes inspired other aspects of my life? I've collaborated with a lot of musicians, and I love putting my words to music. I did it. Oh, that's a whole lot of stories, but it's being aware of genre and approaches to the kind of tangibility of how words can be performed. Because I was always just like, I'm going to write stuff down. This is poetry. And then when you realize that music is just like poetry to these notes, it really opens up your worldview. And so these kind of musical scenes, not just with the D&D ones, but especially there because we play with genre a lot, is being open to like different flavors of existence, being open to the simple moments that inspire, and how to translate that kind of phonetically in words, but also visually, and being hyper aware of, okay, I like the moment that I'm in. Why do I like it? And how can this translate? And so even not feeling like I'm necessarily a musician myself, but being in the great company of them, makes me feel like I've tapped into this kind of undercurrent of life that really, like an ocean, you just kind of ride that wave. It translates things in an interesting way. And I'm just constantly learning how to kind of borrow from it, sure. And I don't know if I'm doing anywhere close to the job, but the musical scenes, I think visually I struggle with that, but musically I think we're doing pretty good.
Yeah, that can go very, very deep.
Like an ocean.
Yeah. Okay, the next question is from Veronica. And the question is, where do you draw inspiration from? So we touched a little bit about this before.
Oh, man.
But maybe if you want to like answer in a more general sense and even like today.
I love this question. It's like my favorite dinner. Was it coffee question, dinner coffee question, whatever. Just to ask people, because I'm just surrounded by these interesting creative people, and I say it as sincerely as I can, because sincerity is the best currency. And there's a lot of overlap, but it seems very specific to the person. And so my inspiration is people. It will always those connections to people, how people make me feel, how I make people feel. The secrets that we keep, the sincerity that we share, the abject truth of everything, how we interact, the ties that bind, the labels that we put on one another, just how feelings just kind of permeate through every experience in life is just community, and to be communal, and by contrast, just isolation. I write a lot about kind of dark themes because I lived through a long time that really affected me, that had very high stakes, like a lot of death. And so I write a lot about that in a very objective way. And I write a lot about celestial things, I think, as a way of kind of removing myself, but also connecting at the exact same time. Juxtapositions, another inspiring point. But my girlfriend and I, one thing that we connected on very soon, very early in our relationship, just talking to one another, was, isn't it great that we're just all made of stardust? And so that was like an incredible, comforting notion that trillions of stars out there, and we got combined into what we are. So how we connect with one another is just another version of kind of stars twinkling at one another, you know? So connection, human connection.
Okay. When you say celestial things that you write about, do you mean like space and like stars and all that, or celestial in terms of like angelic, beyond this world kind of things?
Sometimes it bleeds into that, but it's mostly the former. It's a lot of space and planets and stars and that sort of thing. And I think that boundary between those two options a lot. But yeah, it's usually space.
Okay, that's very cool. Okay, the next question is from Monica. And the question is, what character, D&D or otherwise, is your dream to create and bring to life? What would they look like?
My dream to create. I feel like who I want to make, I've made. So there's not like, oh, here's one out there. I always try to do like a different race and class each time to try to kind of push myself. And like I said, I love juxtaposed characters. Like a great example is just a Fire Genasi pirate, because it's like, Oath of the Open Sea kind of thing. It's like, oh, he's on the ocean, but he's fire. So trying to find those ways. For example, Mercy is an Aormaton, doesn't have blood, is a blood hunter. What does that mean? So you kind of got to redefine these things for yourself. So I won't say it's like dream to play, but I would like to play one that is very close to who I am, something that is more subdued, because I do play a lot of weird characters, because, again, fantasy and everything like that. But something that is very down to earth, not a lot of frills, and go through a long campaign and have a very kind of pure arc to it. No real kind of goofiness necessarily. The tone be fairly serious, but to kind of go through a really long excursion with one of those groups that really respects each other and really finds the community in that process. It doesn't feel like they have to rush or anything. So something where time is an element to the game that kind of allows you things that you wouldn't get necessarily, where the stakes are low for a really long time and you can just make the most of a long excursion. But that's hard to do.
Okay. That sounds like I can relate to that in a weird way a little bit. But like there was this game that I used to play years ago called Neverwinter Nights.
Yeah, sure.
Neverwinter Nights 2. So in that game, you were like the knight commander, knight captain, or something like that. And there was this portion of the game that I loved playing, where you had this keep, and you had to like develop it, and like you would invest like gold into like rebuilding, and it looks like at the beginning it looks like abandoned and old, and like everything is like broken or rotten and stuff like that. But then bit by bit, like after investing money and going to do other missions and adventures, like there was this entire arc in the game where you would see this place spring to life, and like people coming to actually live in the keep and all that. And then like right before the ending sequence begins, you actually have this amazing thing that you built all on your own. And it was, as you said, like something that you did like over time, and that part of the game, like as a player and as someone who experiences the story, like made me want to replay that game so many times to see how that feels, like whether I can do stuff differently and stuff like that. So I love that. I love that you mentioned time. Could do a lot of cool things.
Absolutely.
Okay, now we have a few questions from Candy. We'll start with the first one. If you had to pick one thing you've created to do over, would you? If so, what would it be?
One thing I've created to do over. I would love another shot at the college plays I was in. I know that's like away from D&D, and that was probably the intended kind of thing, but I don't think I cared in the right way. I think college was incredibly busy, and our theater department was very tough about not respecting the students' in crazy schedules that they had, and everybody was so scared of being blacklisted that they really ran themselves ragged. And I had like theater scholarships, so that like I have to audition for everything. If I'm offered anything, I have to take it, kind of thing. And I'm like, this is what I'm here to do, so I'm going to, I was never not in a play and doing a million other things, plus all of college, and then you're trying to get the college experience. So I just I don't think I tried in the way that it's so weird thinking about it, because I feel like a completely different person. Like that happened to a separate being. Through the kind of hard times, I got a little bit of like face aphasia, I think is what it's called. It might be the wrong term, but I couldn't really recognize myself in the mirror. Like I just really couldn't see my face. Wow. And apparently that's like a trauma response of just not allowing yourself to see the ragged nature of how you've been. And that isn't necessarily from college. That's a lot of like family stuff. But there's a distinct kind of line of this happened to somebody else in my past. It's almost like I'm telling the story of somebody that I know rather than my own. And so thinking about the processes of like, I could have done better. I could have taken some things away and really tried in a better way with a kind of renewed perspective that I have now. So we'll go with that.
Wow. That's so cool. You took this question into such a great place. You could have said so many other things, and this is chef's kiss. Okay. The next question from Candy is, what is one thing that you haven't accomplished yet that is on your must-do list?
Oh, honestly, I would just like I think this is true for a lot of people, just our creative output to sustain ourselves. Because I still feel like a baby giraffe in this kind of creative thing. The je ne sais quoi that kind of started all of this is still very new for me, and having all these wonderful contacts that I've made and being involved in streams, it still feels very, very fresh. And there's something there, but I'm not exactly sure how to utilize it to kind of further myself and feel secure financially and everything like that. So as far as accomplishments, that would be astronomical to my well-being of like, hey, you're good, just keep making stuff and people will be there. So we'll say that one.
Yeah, that's cool. I relate to that a lot. Same, like, from our talks that I'm a software engineer, but the thing that's happening right now, this is the thing that fuels my creativity and my, like, not sure if passion is the right word,
Sure.
but maybe sometimes I can't find the right word to use.
Isn't that kind of a cool feeling though? Like, to give a word to something is to kind of constrain it, to cage it in a way, you know? So
Yeah.
you just kind of let it be a little nebulous.
Yeah, especially when you're coming from a different native language.
For sure.
You're thinking about things in a different sense sometimes. Sure. Because I still have, like, even though I can still talk to you in a very fast manner, I still have, like, those moments where I'm thinking something in my head in Hebrew,
right,
and then I need to translate it. But yeah, that's very, very cool.
You're very good at it, by the way. This.
Thank you. Okay, the next question from Candy, and the last one from Candy, is: do you have a preferred medium to work in or with? Poetry, music, songs, storytelling, etc.
Poetry. Yeah. It's easy, it's simple. I kind of think in a poetry kind of way. That sounds weird. I just like being able to get out anything I can write on, which I've written on so many different things just to get the idea out. Because sometimes, you wake up in a cold sweat at like 3 a.m. I'm like, I got to get it out. And that's it. But yeah, there are no frills to it. It's just words, and it's kind of bonded me to some amazing people. Just ideas of strung together. So poetry, for sure.
That's very cool. I don't have a lot of experience with poetry. I did try writing a few pieces in the past, but like, where do you find, like, do you have like this kind of lyric or not lyric, like this undertone music to the words that you write in a poet, in a piece, or is it like just like the flow of the words is the thing that flows out of you?
Little column A, column B. I think there is absolutely a melodic nature inherent in just words. I remember someone talking about how to like creatively write and really make some sentences short, some sentences long. Like, look at how the different ways of expressing yourself really has like a percussive nature, if nothing else. So there's a lot of times where I'm like, I just want like 2 words in this line and then 9 words over here, and it just kind of staggers appropriately. And sometimes it's like a stream of consciousness poem where I want them to read it with certain like breath elements to it. So sometimes it's about speech, sometimes it has a musical influence, sometimes it's just a scattered mess that just needs to be a mess. Like, things don't need to be cleaned up. a lot of times. And I kind of go into it not thinking about sharing it, just as a lot of times I do write things that are really dark, and some people go like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm fine," but I love writing from other people's perspectives, and nobody really in particular. A lot of times, just what if this person was going through this, or what if this fantastical element was there. This happens a lot of times where I'll get an idea for something really small, like a line or a quote, and I'll go like, well, this now needs to be in a speech or a monologue or a poem. And then, well, that now exists, and I need somebody to say this monologue. Okay, like, who that character is going to be, and well, that character needs to exist somewhere. So I've built these kind of crazy creative worlds just because I wanted a single line to exist properly. So, and same thing with songs, you know, it's just like, oh, that's a really good lyric. Well, we got to build a song around it now.
That's very cool. The entire building and all that. It's a very good segue to the next question, which is from Ailin.
Yes.
What is your creative process like?
What is my creative process like? It really depends. I have a lot of fingers in a lot of pies right now. And if I'm working with someone, it kind of follows some of the questions here. Is like, hey, what inspires you? What are you trying to tell? I really I talked about this just the other day, like a week ago, in different terms, but it is deconstructing everything about the process first. Because I think we have an inherent, like, this is what it should be. I talk about that with D&D streams a lot. Like, they have kind of Critical Role or Dimension 20 as a model to do, and they're amazing models to do, but they think that's the only option. That's what we have to do. And so just break it down into the simplest terms and define those terms for ourselves of like, what are we trying to do? Okay, a song. What kind of song do we want to do? What kind of genre to tempo to length? What are we trying to communicate with that? What kind of medium is that then going to go into? That's something that we did for Jimothy very early on. It was just like, oh, I want to make music. Okay, is it going to be, it has to be short form to be on TikTok and Instagram and all that sort of stuff. So that really directs the flow of stuff. If it's kind of like a D&D world, it's really going down to just a bare marble of a world. And are we telling this in a short form mini campaign or like a one shot to like a full campaign? So without getting crazy into it, is just what are they trying to accomplish, or what am I trying to accomplish? Break down the terms, define the terms, and kind of move forward with that. And don't skip ahead, because I think that's a great way to get stuck or to get very frustrated, because we put unnecessary constraints on ourselves that are not our own. It's just we're playing at something that is parallel to what we're trying to do, but isn't exactly what it is. I hope that made sense.
Okay, that's cool, and I also loved like the thing that you mentioned about Critical Role and Dimension 20 being models. That people like try to stick to those models. I think Brennan actually said defined this in my previous interview with him in a really cool way, where he said like Dimension 20 is like can scratch a very specific itch. That's what he called it. And then we talked about like Worlds Beyond Number, their podcast, and that is like this long form campaign, which is going to be like for years, and like so I love that you mentioned like this. What do we want to do? Like we don't have to stick to those other models that exist out there. We can just do our thing, but we need to define it properly. So that's very cool. Okay, the next question is from Patrick Perini.
Yes.
And the question is, when you think about your artistic career, do you have any long-term ambitions, or do you take it one project at a time?
Long-term ambitions are starting to manifest themselves, because getting into the stage that I'm in now is still very new, still very fresh. Was just didn't really have goals. I just wanted to make a song every now and then with my friend Chris, and he came into it, which I'm sure we'll talk about tomorrow, but it kind of bleeds into this. Like, he was like, I want Critical Role to notice our stuff. Like, that's the thing. And we wrote a song called Smiley Day for Fresh Cut Grass, Sam Riegel's character. And I made us a Twitter, and like our first thing was a day one of getting Sam Riegel to notice our little puppet music. And immediately, like 10 minutes later, he was like, this was amazing. Thank you so much, guys. And I like copied that tweet, sent it, like the little retweet, and sent it to Chris. And I was like, hey, dream achieved. Good job. And so crazy highlight. So now like my world is kind of opening up. So I would love to be kind of in that space of the Brennans and the Abrias and Erica and Lou, you know, just naming the whole Worlds Beyond Number cast, to, you know, the Critical Role cast and Amy Vorpal, and just the everybody just that you see on these various platforms playing D&D for charities or companies or their own stuff. That would be like an amazing thing to kind of go toward, but not in the way of, you know, hey, I'm here, please lift me up, but kind of having like a parallel structure that kind of celebrates everything that we love in that kind of world building space. I don't want to leave it as such a general answer, but I know that, okay, a good ambition, Chris and I are working on a podcast right now that is very kind of like comedy sketch focused. And I think that could be our, this is probably a terrible way to put it, like our like golden goose of, here's a rhythm that we speak in that can heighten, almost in that kind of Saturday Night Live way of featuring music to sketches and things like that, but not long at all. We'll talk more about that later, but having that be good and vibrant and accepted to where it can actually sustain us. So all these different questions kind of wrapping into one. But very selfishly, whatever it is, especially that, I want it to give me an allowance to connect and collaborate. That has been the through line through my entire life. So if people go like, that's really cool, I want to see what else they do. And since they're so D&D-ified and D&D adjacent, that give reason to work on building worlds because you made them laugh. Like, what a beautiful kind of sentiment that is. Like, you kind of hit their heart and you want to expand that elsewhere. It's cool.
Okay. Before we move to the next question, I will say, how dare you use Golden Goose when we are at the current place that we are in Never After.
Glad you got that. Very intense moment. No spoilers.
No spoilers. No spoilers for Never After. Okay, the next question is from Ash from Mates of Fate. And this question is quite long, so we might break it down a bit, but I'll just read it. What are the best and worst parts of being a content creator in the TTRPG community space? Where do you find the most support? If money and time weren't an issue, what would you be creating? If your network was infinite, who would you want to collaborate with? Have you had any aha moments with content creation where you've realized, oh man, there is a much easier way to do this? If so, what was it? And the last part of this plethora of questions: are you excited to play Kids on Bikes with us?
Ash, wow. Those are questions that we could talk about in a singular interview. So one by one, I think the first one was best and worst part of being a content creator in the TTRPG space. After that, It gets blurry. Worst part probably is the finicky nature of algorithms and those uncontrollable high tech, for lack of a better term, nuances that a lot of times don't really interact with quality as much as one would like. I know that we've had like everybody around me has had just struggles of like, what I put so much time into this, the return on investment of this content that we are putting out can just give you nothing and feel very much like a failure, very much like, well, they don't care. This isn't hitting. I thought it was great. I enjoyed making it. So when you're in a battle of like, this is what I like versus this is what does well, then you kind of have to hang your hat up of like, well, I don't want to do something that I hate. But even then you at least have like a through line of like knowing that, oh, that works. So at least I know, but it feels kind of random and it, and everybody's really kind of competing against each other. So it can get a little abrasive that way. So I'll say that's the worst part. The best part is you get to play games with friends, and that's amazing. You get to, all the things that I mentioned that I like doing is connecting with people, collaborating with people, doing things that are like high fantasy, and making weird wackadoodle characters and taking them extremely seriously, making people laugh, making people really cry. Like, that's the goal in every guest campaign, like make you care about my silly little character to the point of tears, which so far pretty good track record. But yeah, man, you get people in this space are so supportive. They're so nice. Everybody is just like, yeah, come on in, let me share my expertise in this thing and how to use this platform, from your Spotify's and YouTube's and TikToks and everything like that. There is an incredible warmth there in the trials and tribulations of the worst part, So, yeah, that's the answer to part 1 of 17.
Okay. The next part of this was, where do you find the most support?
Chris, my collaborator, my mom, who I talk to all the time and has no idea what I'm talking about a lot of the time, but has been the best listener ever, is always interested, always takes the time, could just be like spinning a million plates and juggling a million things, but will just stop to hear me talk about, hey, my wooden robot character just did this thing. And she was like, that's great, honey. I'm like, I'm 32. But my mom is just like, since I was a kid, just whatever, like would do the same for pretend. And
shout out to Hunter's mom.
Oh my God, thank you. My mom is the best. And my girlfriend, Shanna, she is like the best parts of me. She is a magical creature of a person. Just, which sounds like such a very romantic thing to say, maybe, but you would meet her and go like, no, I get it. Yeah, for sure. Like, just a wellspring of inspiration. I tell her all the time, it's like, I will talk to you and then immediately write a bunch of stuff. A lot of poetry, a lot of songs and things. And something that I've talked to with her and a few other people, I think we encounter like muses in our lives, for lack of a better term, that for whatever reason, being around them just makes you a better creative person, or maybe just a better person. And it might be somebody that you just met, but you got the vibe, the wavelength, and you're kind of like, well, you need to be an important part of my life. And I think through those vibes makes you kind of naturally close. And it's so cool when you can do that for one another. And that's happened so few times in my life, but it is so apparent. And you don't want to let those people go. It is such a rare thing. And to like be in a relationship with one is just like the muse of your life. You're just like, it's truly an amazing feeling. And she's infinitely supportive. So yeah, it's a good little team.
That's amazing. Okay, and the next one was, if money and time weren't an issue, what would you be creating?
If money and time weren't an issue, what would you be creating? I think we've all wanted to get like a commune together, to get like a piece of land, build a bunch of weird little tiny homes and whatever else with all our TTRPG friends so we can play games in person, not have to worry about rent and bills or anything, and just give people the creative space to like, don't worry about anything else. Just make stuff. Like, that's the dream, to win the lottery, get a big house, and just have like creatives in and out of the house of like, while you're here, just make things. Just whatever you can. So what do I want to create? I want to create a sanctuary for other creative people to collaborate with.
You know, as you say that, it just hit me that a lot of the creators I talked to in previous interviews, like, naturally gravitate towards that kind of dream as well. If money and like time and life weren't in the way, like, we sort of like, as probably as human beings, we naturally gravitate towards like supporting each other and making these spaces. And like, I can think of a few examples from past interviews that people said, yeah, I want to create this creator house. I want to create this team. I want to create this thing. And that's just a realization that I had. It's so cool.
I find that the most generous people are those who have gone without a great deal. So they just want to kind of lift people up. And I've dealt with people who are quite well off, and they are quite persnickety of their assets and things and really want to keep it close. So yeah, I like the creative people in that way because they just want to share.
Okay. And the next one is, if your network was infinite, who would you want to collaborate with?
This reminds me of the question of like, who do you want at your D&D table if you could have anybody? And always like top of my list was Sir Ian McKellen. I was just like, that would be so cool. It was just like a wealth of knowledge and just infinite kind of characters and stuff. If my network was infinite, like, of course I want to work with like the Critical Role cast and the Dimension 20 guys and Worlds Beyond Number, and just I like it when little tiny interactions happen on TikTok with those guys. Like, I'll do Dimension 20 theme songs, going like, one of them see it, like Erika Ishii commented on one of them and was just like, this slaps. And I was like, oh, they know I exist. You know. And like Becca Scott and Sam Reich have done similar things. So that feels like not such a stretch, but I feel like that's such a cop-out because it's like your network is infinite, right? So I like the idea, I'm kind of working through this in real time, of, okay, you play D&D and you play these TTRPG games, and you are creating some amazing scenes, like some things that are so layered and so contextualized and so otherworldly that you just get up from the table and you're like, that is something beautiful that we created that nobody's going to get to experience. So it'd be so cool to like hire Titmouse, who did the Legend of Vox Machina, and some like animation studios, and go like, let's just get like a bunch of like D&D parties together and like pick out little scenes, not like the whole thing, don't go crazy, but give people the chance to really visualize and make tangible these worlds. And just kind of like what I've seen a few creators do, and what I want to do is, you know, write like theme songs to D&D streams and whatnot, but really make like, I want to share this epic moment in the best way possible. So I don't think it's a cop-out. It's more so just get all the creatives together, get orchestral musicians, studio musicians in with animation studios to just average D&D players who are like, we have a really cool story that's 30 seconds long that we can communicate, and this summarizes the experiences. This is something there. And to like street artists and buskers and everything like that. It would just be so cool. And kind of going off of what we were just talking about with like a creative house of what are the different mediums that we can express this kind of TTRPG love in that you don't get to see all that often.
Okay, so the next one is, have you had any aha moments with content creation where you've realized, oh man, there is a much easier way to do this? If so, what was it?
Yeah, I think little things just through like messing with CapCut, because again, not a video editor, and I'm just trying to use those, and I'll find little features, but nothing like that's interesting, like aha, like something with green screen or like adding music or something like that. Not necessarily interesting. I think it's not like aha, it's more like, oh, like a lot of there you go. Yeah,
okay.
Sure. I'll say one that was like Chris didn't want to be on camera, I didn't want to be on camera, but we wanted to deliver the music, and we know we needed a visual element. So I remember that night where we had that discussion, I was on Imager, and there's a little GIF of a girl with her puppet going like, "Go to slip, you must slip," and I'm like, a puppet has a face. I'll go get a puppet. And so I went to Etsy and went through pages and pages because puppets are quite expensive. And there's a lovely couple from Albany who was selling like the puppets that you see for about $40. I was like, I'll get one of those. And so that was the main aha moment of this creative journey of like, we'll get a puppet. Do you have any puppet experience? No. Some people go like, oh, Hunter, the master puppeteer. It's like, not even close. Just trying to deliver a song in a way that's fine. The song is great. Pay attention to the song.
That's so cool. You heard it here first. Okay, and the last question from Ash is, are you excited to play Kids on Bikes with us?
Yes, so much so. I love the Mates of Fate's story. We post our content to Instagram. I had to kind of play catch up, but Mates of Fate, this account, who I did not know who they were, but they would repost our content to their story all the time, and hundreds of times. And I was just like, wow, they really like our stuff. And then I eventually clicked on their thing, and it was just like, oh, we have a D&D stream. I was like, I'm going to pop in to their D&D stream and see if they notice my name. So I go in there, and I'll never forget it. They're playing Lost Mines of Phandelver, and I just click in the chat, and it has a little Genasi Qua there on Twitch. And Ash just goes like, I'm sorry, we have to stop everything. Genasi Qua is in the chat. We love you. And they were so nice. They stopped all the rhythm, and I was like, oh, too much attention. But she was so sweet, and so added me to the Discord, and we became friends. And so it took a few months, and she was like, hey, are you interested to do this Kids on Bikes thing with us? We're just going to build this world together. And I'm like, you're saying all the right things. Absolutely. And after watching them a whole bunch of times, and they just have amazing personalities, so welcoming, do amazing amount of charity streams. Shout out forever to Mates of Fate. Go follow them, subscribe, everything, because they're truly lovely and giving. And I get to be involved in their storytelling process now. So excited is not a good enough word.
Okay, that's amazing. I need to check out Mates of Fate.
Please do.
Yeah, okay. The next question is from Mai.
We know Mai.
We know Mai. Okay, so the question is, hey, pal! As you know, Jimothy and Mercy are partners in crime. If they decided to band together and make an experimental album, what would it be called, and what genre would it be?
Oh, what a great question. I love this question. I think of this all the time. I've had multiple creative projects just around people saying whatever, and I'll go like, that's a great band name. And then they'll say something like, I was like, well, that's their first album. Man, what would it be called? I feel like it needs to be like prescient to the story, but maybe something around it. Maybe some sort of like...
Maybe prescient.
Prescient is such a good word. I will say their first album should be Kart Driving 101. And what genre should it be? Like a jug band. Like very intense bluegrass.
Okay.
Just a very high octane kinetic kind of thing. Like, and Mercy would play like a washboard. It'd be great. There you go.
That's very, very cool.
Gonna think about this question for days.
Okay, the next question is from Mike/Grimm.
Yes.
The question is, when creating characters and their stories for streamed games, how do you find a balance between narrative satisfaction and performance? Do you find it challenging to marry these two concepts on stream, or does it come naturally with the campaigns you play?
Narrative satisfaction and performance. I think simply, and something that we touched on before, and this is just, it gets easier. So theater background helps, improv background helps, but just lean into your fellow players. You're not an island. You're playing a team game. So perform in a way that you're not trying to tell your story. You're trying to support someone else telling their story. And you are trusting them to do the same for you. And I've said this before, it's like, if your character has a big celebration, a big win, or a big tragedy happen, and then they're like in the corner going like, ah, or yay, you know, and nobody interacts with that, and then they're like, oh, okay, well, moving on. You're just, it takes the wind out of the sails, not just of you, but the entire story. Then nothing matters. Like, everything has to matter. And so you kind of also have to have the meta decision or the meta realization of, you are people around a table, virtually, most of the time now, playing a game together. And you put a lot of care into these characters and their backstories and what they're going through and what we do every single week. We prioritize this time together. So celebrate your friends, you know? That's how you marry them together. Just celebrate your friends and everything works out.
I love that. Okay. The final fan question we made is from James. And the question is, what is one of your most proudest works that you feel like deserved more attention than it got?
Proudest works, that really opens it up to a lot of things.
That's good to know.
Okay, sure. This is very obscure, but I kind of want to mention this. Very early on when I moved to Houston, I got involved with a collaborative website called Hip Record, which is still going strong. It was made by Joseph Gordon-Levitt and his brother, and it was a place for people to collaborate. It was all about collaboration. So it was like, you can write a quote here, someone can take it, put it into a poem, they can take that, make it into a theme song, take the theme song, make an animation around it, then somebody else can make it into a novel, or, you know, all sorts of different things going on, people interacting in that way. And I was like, I just need to connect with people, I need to collaborate, and this seems right up my alley. So I have a lot of poetry, I'm just going to upload some and be inspired by others. And the first thing I did, I remember, was there was a picture of a kind of a cartoonish picture of like a pinup astronaut girl on the moon with like a suitcase, kind of looking up at the stars. And the prompt was like, write something based on this picture. So I wrote this song called Space Dame, and about a couple days later, a guy from, I think, Estonia did a really cool acoustic version of that song. Just such an interesting kind of percussive melody. I was like, oh, this is the best. This is so cool, right? And then a guy who's very prominent on there, he went by Tinderlocks. I remember that very distinctly. He was from New Zealand, and he added all sorts of instruments. He was a multi-instrumentalist, had a slide whistle in there, and it was just like kind of an upbeat folk song. It was really cool. And that got onto their front page of their site within that week, which is like a big deal. It was a big deal at the time. Still probably is. And Joseph Gordon-Levitt like referenced it in one of his little weekly catch-up videos, and I was just like, top of the mountain right here, really cool. So I was and I got on their front page, I think, like 7 times over the course of a couple years. But I had met so many people to collaborate with through all these different projects, and one of them that I'm so proud of was someone had a project of the stages of grief, and we're making art around them. And when I noticed it, they were on, because they were focusing on one at a time, they were on the third stage, which is bargaining. And I was like, that's really difficult to write about, because the other ones have such a kind of a interesting, not interesting, but like kind of obvious stance of like anger and depression, or, you know, that's pretty easy to write about. So bargaining, I was like, oh, what makes something bargaining? And I did a lot of research for this, just like people going through that step. And a lot of it is like, if I could go back knowing then what I know now, right? A lot of that, like if I just had the information then, because they're grieving, they, you know, want to prevent this thing. If I could just, you know, a lot of that. And so it was very temporal. It was very about time. And so I wrote a song called If Only I Were a Time Traveler, because I remember in the shower, I was like, that rhymes. I can write a song to that. If Only I Were a Time Traveler. And it got performed a few different times and gained a little bit of notoriety just kind of on the site. But I was like, this is probably the best thing I'll ever write. And it was performed in such different ways. One was by this German musical theater friend that I had made. It was so ethereal, so like indie movie kind of thing. And then this one over here was just this very, still kind of slowed down and sulkin, like acoustic, like plucked kind of thing. And then a friend of mine actually went on there and did like an almost like interesting bard version of it. But it's probably one of my favorite things I've ever written. And I wish I could just, and maybe I will one day, and take it and go like, this needs to be elsewhere. Because I fancied it like an anthem of that bargaining. I think I nailed it with that, and I'd never give myself that credit of just like, oh, it could have been better, blah blah blah, imposter syndrome, whatever. But for that specific emotion, it was like, this is exactly what that is. And it wasn't too big, it wasn't too long or anything. It was good. It was great.
Okay, this is so cool. I love this so much. I can relate to that experience with my time on Medium. There was a time in 2019 where I discovered Medium and would probably publish every day. So they just started when I started writing on the site. They just started introducing this thing called curation, where they would take what people posted, and if their team of human curators would find it like in a sort of like standard of writing, they would put it on the homepage. So that entire thing like opened so many opportunities for me. The most like important one was, of course, the article that led to the interview with Brennan, the first ever interview with Brennan, which was put on on their main like homepage. But what people don't know is that some of those articles led to someone reaching out to me via email and asking to translate some of my articles into French. Like there was some kind of monetary thing involved, and they wanted me to sign a contract, but like it never really followed through on their end. Like I was down for it, but the actual like thing that my words would be translated into French, and then there was like this other service that reached out to me to actually narrate some of my posts, some of my articles. So when people take your work and do stuff with it, it is so exciting. It's so amazing, and yeah, I love this so much.
That's awesome, man.
This is, yeah, that's a very cool experience, like for you as well, like taking your words, taking your ideas, and like making something else from what you provided as some kind of an ingredient into something bigger or something like different than what you initially intended. So that's very cool.
I think this interview is the kind of moral that we're circling is people have experiences and battles that they go through, and you have to let them know that they have validity and they have value, and don't let it just stay there. Let it be a part of something bigger. We are bigger than the sum of our parts, like include people, love them, love what they put out there. It doesn't have to be clean. It doesn't have to be smooth. Perfection is incredibly overrated. Like, love all the faults of someone. You don't know what battles they're going through. And just allow them into your space and tell stories together. And getting out of yourself, escapism, being involved in fantasy and tabletop has a funny way of rounding back around to helping you consolidate and deal with experiences that are troubling you, for sure, in your own time, and that's invaluable. That's so good. And you get to make best friends.
Okay, Hunter, this brings us to the end of our interview. I have one final question for you. And before I ask that final question, I do want you to tell anyone who is listening or watching this where they can find you and anything else you want to plug.
Okay, great. Well, I am Hunter. I am one half of Je ne sais quoi. You can find us at Je ne sais quoi on TikTok and Instagram and YouTube. I would also, and on Spotify. We are getting a Spotify thing going. Mentioned the podcast, which is upcoming, but I think it's good to plug here. And I also stream weekly on Wednesdays as Mercy on the Quest Junkies UK Twitch, the Wild Mount Chronicles, which also has other servings of amazing content, so highly recommend. I will be on Mates of Fate later in July for a Kids on Bikes 3-shot, most likely, on the 8th, the 20th, and the 28th as it stands right now. They also have amazing content and do great charity work, especially for the Trevor Project and other places, so please go help them out. And I will be streaming and popping up on other streams, quite a few other places. Some are secretive and surprise, but yeah, just watch D&D streams and I'll probably pop up on one eventually, maybe. I guess that's it.
Okay. So the final question. What's in the future of Hunter Weston Thompson?
What's in the future? It's such a dangerous question. It's one of those things of like, society is crazy, things are amorphous and nebulous, and nothing has turned out even close to what I might have imagined. Kind of going back to the impermanence of a lot of things. The last year has taught me to believe in things again and to dare to dream. What's in the future? Being picky about who I spend my time with and who I pour my heart into, but the ones that I do, being in close proximity and loving them hard and letting them know every day that they're dreamlike and have value and can take on the world. Hopefully I get to be there to support and witness and everything, but they kick ass on their own. Being a good supporter and collaborator of TTRPGs, and hopefully always helping out the new kid in those spaces. Making Je ne sais quoi a great brand of those kind of uplifting ideals, making a lot of silly music, a lot of stupid little ridiculous sketches, and being having a permanent spot in that kind of D&D TTRPG space, and hopefully opening that up to the kind of greater entertainment kind of energy. That'd be really cool to kind of be a force for that, to bridge that gap, to not be so inclusive, not inclusive, but so in our own world that we don't see the kind of greater viability of what we can offer, the escapism, the fantasy, the connection that we can. So I don't know if that's a good answer. It's a little nebulous, yeah. It's a little out there, but yeah, just being a good friend, honestly. Everything works out if you do that.
Hey, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Geek Peek. Before I let you go, I want to thank the individuals who went the extra mile and became my patrons. So, without further ado, thank you to Arthur Morrill, Bob Prescott, Lexi Gardner, Cody Neville, Charlie Fisher, Stoat Dross, Laura Jane Hamilton, Maggie, Grace Bauer, Captain K-Snow, Tyler Felsted, Ella Lubell, Mendy Kennedy, Ross Simpson, Jacob Cook, Emma Rose D20 is my church, Patch Kelly, Sarah Kate Noel, and Zachary Tyndall. If you want to join them, please head on over to patreon.com/theorancoin, and I'll see you in the next one.